Thursday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald back with you for another Mac Files broadcast on the 26th day of October 2023. Now, I don't know of a better fired up Yankee to commemorate the anniversary of the gunfight at the OK Corral with Wyatt Earp and the Cowboys than to get Jennifer Harrison on here, Victims' Rights of New York, because she's fired up, and I think she would give the Cowboys a run for their money if that would have been Jennifer Harrison against all those Cowboys. How are you, dear? It's good to see you. It's been a while. We have tried to have you on a couple of times. I know the scheduling has not worked out, but I'm just tickled to have you tonight. Look, we got a lot of serious stuff to talk about, but it's always a pleasure. Good to see you. How are you? How you been?
I'm hanging in there. You know, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the air, but hopefully we'll, God willing, get through all of it together. So it's funny that you mentioned the Yankees because I'm actually drinking out of my Yankee cup tonight.
Well, I will not make any disparaging remarks about your baseball team. I'm a Braves fan, and we swept you through the road. But anyway, we will not. We'll save that for other discussions at a later time. But it is good to see you. We love you, Yankees. We just, you know, we express our love differently with certain slogans that we have about you Yankees up there. But anyway, hey, listen. One of the reasons I brought you on tonight, you're in the hotbed of New York City, Jennifer, and it has been a wild 2 weeks. The world, I'm going to say it like this. The world's changed since I've seen you last. The events of October the 7th, I think, have sent a ripple effect, not just through America, but the world and Israel. But that situation has got the potential to maybe boil over into something far greater than what even we're seeing tonight. But what has been one of the most heartbreaking elements of this has been the reaction in this country of citizens, children, college kids, adults that have, and these things always tend to do this, it always sort of brings the stuff that may have been beyond under the surface for a long time. And then when an event like this happens, it just explodes everything. And everybody, it reveals what people really think. I have been blown away in a disgusting way to watch this anti-Semitism on display in one of the cities is New York. It's not just New York. It's all over the country. But especially in New York, watching thousands march down the streets with Palestinian flags. And I don't want to disparage any group, but there's been a lot of these fringe groups that if they were in Arab territory, Jennifer, they'd be beheaded for what they do, okay? They'd be beheaded. And yet they are promoting barbarism. They're promoting a group that were cutting heads off babies. They were promoting a group that was doing all sorts of most of the most barbaric acts. And whether you agree with Israel's policies as a state or a government, to me, that is thrown out the window when you are dealing with the type of attack and the type of atrocities that was committed on civilians. These were not committed on soldiers, even though soldiers were done some bad things done to. These were innocent children, women, the elderly, couples at music events. And people are protesting, not the terrorists, they're protesting Israel. What say you, friend? You were right there in the middle of it. You've seen it firsthand.
Right. So, I mean, there's a couple of different things to take apart here. You know, you said that this kind of shows everybody who they are, but I kind of beg to differ because when we were attacked on 9/11, we saw the best of humanity and everybody coming together, right? But I think that also has a lot to do with our leadership and who we had in charge at that time. You know, we saw Mayor Giuliani right away know that there probably was going to be Islamophobia or a lot of hate towards the Muslim community because Muslims did this to us, or terrorist Muslims, extremists and fanatics did this to us. So he gathered everybody from all different sides of the spectrum, from all religious faiths, and got them together and did a prayer service and whatnot. None of that has been done. Instead, what we see is the Democrat Socialist Party, the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, New York Democrat Socialists, come out and right away, it's almost like they had like some kind of intuition as to what was going to happen. I don't want to make any accusations because I'm not saying that. But I mean, right away, they had pro-Palestine protests. and kind of like incited all of this hatred, where I don't understand. I do understand. I'm sorry, that's a wrong choice of words. Where is the humanity? You know, like the days following 9/11, we would see people come together and say, this is not tolerable. This is not what humanity is about. This is not what society is about. And we're all going to come together and pray as people and neighbors and brothers and sisters, and just pray for peace and for the lost souls that were killed. And that's not happening here. So why is that not happening here? Number one, it's because of the leadership that we have. They don't care to unite people. All they want to do is divide us. And we've seen that time and time again. They have an agenda. And number two, it's because the people that are promoting these pro-Palestine, which is really pro-Hamas rallies and protests and hate and anger and inciting violence against Jews here on our soil, are the same people that have been advocating for the release of murderers and rapists and people that rip babies and women from their homes, rob them, kill them on a daily basis here on American soil. So nobody really should be shocked that this is their reaction to this, because there's a complete depraved indifference towards human life, an epidemic, I would say, of depraved indifference towards human life sweeping across society, and it's fueled by the people that are fueling these protests and rallies.
And I'm going to say something, and I agree with everything you just said. I agree with everything you just said. There was a difference of time. I mean, that's been 22 years ago. I think our country was different then, without a doubt. I don't think we'd ever experienced anything like that on our soil. But look, again, I'm not here to debate and argue, not with you so much, but I know there's people out there that are making the issue about Israel, the state, Israel, the government. And I support Bibi Netanyahu. I believe that they are our only ally in the Middle East. I think that it would be in America's best interest politically, but also spiritually to do that. But that's another discussion for another time. But this is my point. I don't have any problem, Jen, with people, if they want to take a side in this thing about Palestine or Palestinians and Israel, because we're a free country. Okay, we don't live in Iran, where they cut your head off if you dissent with the government. We don't live in North Korea, where they pretty much put a gun to your head and blow your brains out if you disagree with Kim Jong-un. We don't live in China. We live in the good old United States of America. What my problem has been with these protests has been the children and the young people and adults walking around saying things like, F the Jews, gas the Jews, let's round up the Jews and kill them all. They're vermin. And it makes something that Adolf Hitler and the Nazis of 1939, they would blush at some of the stuff that I've seen in the last 2 weeks in this nation. And again, a lot of the people that are doing it, and I'm going to ask you this, it's sort of, I'm saying as a statement, but I'm asking this to you as a question. I got a little 5-year-old grandson. He's precious as can be. If I was to take him, I used this analogy the other night, if I was to have him go to a park in New York City, and in that park there was a black child playing there was a Jewish child playing there was a Hispanic child playing there was a Asian child playing there, I'd say, go play. I'm going to tell you something. He would interact with those 4 children and never even think one time that they're black, Asian, Jewish, or whatever. But if Papa Mac, before he went to that playground, whispered it in his ear, that Jewish kid over there is vermin. You need to hate that black kid. You need to hate that Chinese kid. You don't need to associate with those kind of people. They're the vermin of the earth. They're the snakes of the earth. Let me tell you what my 5-year-old grandson would do. Even at 5, he would shun them and probably go say things to them he shouldn't say and get his little butt popped by Papa Mac. Hatred is taught, Jim. It's taught. It may be in the hearts of people as a spiritual situation, but I'm talking about this kind of hate is taught. And these kids that are protesting, I do blame them, because some of them are in their 20s. I lay it back at the door of mom and daddy and the school systems and the colleges that are teaching this to these kids.
Right.
Am I right on that?
You're 150% right. I mean, look at what's happening. You know, when I say that there's an epidemic of depraved indifference towards human life sweeping across our country and society across the globe, I mean that includes the indoctrination and the embedding of hate and division and all of these woke philosophies, or they call themselves woke philosophies, into these young people and their young minds, when they know that they're impressionable, and it's intentional. And it's by, George Soros had Kathy Boudin, who was a domestic terrorist. Once she was released from jail for killing 2 police officers in the Brinks robbery, she was made a professor at Columbia University. These are the types of people that are teaching young, impressionable minds. And you might be an adult, but like 2021, you're still learning.
You're very impressionable.
How you feel, how you think as an adult. You're away from your parents for the first time, and you look up to these people. So, and nobody was honest about what Kathy Boudin had done. So, her bio didn't say anything that she, killed 2 police officers on her Columbia page. So these are the people that are teaching these kids. We now know the kinds of people and the views that they have, and that they're instilling these views in children in elementary school and junior high school and high school. So, at some point you have to take responsibility as an adult for your behavior. But when they're still being, bombarded with these kinds of ideologies and philosophies, and saying that, if you don't believe this, you're racist, you're bad. They're being taught that they're bad people if they don't agree with this. And, I've seen it for quite some time, at least since 2017 on this scale, as a survivor of a homicide victim, when they're being taught that if you don't want the release of a rapist or a murderer, that you're a bad person, instead of, understanding that the victim's life has been forever altered.
That's right.
The compassion and the empathy have been misplaced onto people or monsters that intentionally inflict harm upon other human beings for quite some time. And, you've been trying to call attention to it. I've been screaming from the rooftops trying to call attention to it. And now here we're seeing it on this scale, and the only thing shocking to me is the amount of people that are shocked by it.
That's a great point.
This is what we've been seeing, and we knew that this is what it was going to lead to when it started.
I asked a friend of mine Tuesday night or Monday night. We were talking about this very thing, and I was sharing with them that the moral clarity barometer of this country scares the hell out of me. You deal with victims. That's what you do. That's what your organization's about. Y'all deal with helping victims find their rights, find their voice in a very distorted, ugly justice system that has gone to hell and back in this country.
I just want to interrupt you there. I'm sorry. But what I also do, and what a lot of people that I work with also care about, is prevention. Because once you become a victim and somebody's dead and somebody's going to jail for life, that's too late for everybody that's involved. Too many lives are already destroyed. So I do believe that there are root causes, education, poverty, environment, homelessness, mental health. There are all kinds of issues that need to be addressed in order to prevent crime. So I'm not like some right-wing MAGA extremist that says throw everybody in jail and don't have any compassion for another human being.
Well, I would say that most right-wing extreme MAGA people don't feel that way either. There may be a few out there that do, but I will say this. Look, I have no problem if the justice system was right. If the justice system is right, you would have the balance of mercy and justice, because that's what a true justice system operates in. But my point that I'm trying to make is this. In light of the victims of this nation of crime, and we see something on an international scale that, Jim, look, I'm 58 years old, and I've never seen the barbarism that was exhibited, and that war, that what Hamas did to the civilians of Israel was something that had not been perpetrated on Israel since the Holocaust, and when she wasn't even a nation then. And but the moral
to be
clarity,
honest with you, have we ever seen this kind of barbaric behavior since like the crusade. I mean, like, yeah, the Holocaust, was horrible, but like the fact that they ripped babies from their beds and burned them and burned people. I mean, I don't.
But that's my point. You're going right into my point here. People that don't have moral clarity that that's evil, they've got far worse problems. And we've got a far worse problem in society
Right.
if we can't define that as evil. And you've
Right.
got congresswomen that can't.
Right.
And from up, not your state, but a few states over to your west, she don't believe that that's evil. She
Right.
thinks the evil ones are the ones that are trying to defend themselves against that tonight. And there's a
Right.
lot of people that are with her, Jen. That's my point. I'm not, look, the moral.
No, I get.
Go
I
ahead.
get what you were trying to say, and we're in complete agreement. I just, there are people on the left that try to vilify people like me because they say that we have no compassion or empathy or whatnot. But I have a full picture of everything that's going on, and we can have compassion and want to address root causes. Like the other side is saying, like, okay, Palestine has their reasons for doing. No, there's no
reason for that. What they
there's
did.
no reason whatsoever to burn babies.
No.
There's not, what they did was completely barbaric, and I don't understand how, like I said before, how everybody, especially these kids in college, who these are their classmates.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a private school in Brooklyn where there were like 4 or 5 Jewish kids who had to barricade themselves
Go ahead.
library.
I heard that. Was that up in you?
Banging on their door.
Was that up there in
Banging.
New York?
It was in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. I did not know that. I heard about that today.
It was horrible, banging on the door. Like, I mean, it sounded like, and I heard that kind of sound when we were testifying at the judiciary hearing, and I was nervous. But like, I couldn't imagine being a young kid hearing that, knowing what had just happened, and having seen videos and all kinds, like, not knowing if these people were coming to do that to you. And I don't understand how these are your classmates.
Yeah.
Where is the humanity? How are, like in the 60s, everybody would get together, right? And all the young kids and young liberals were all anti-war, right? Like, but everybody was kind of like on the same page with that. Like, we don't want war and whatnot. Well, how are these kids so divided amongst each other these days? And how do you do that to your classmates?
I think
you're all the same age. You're all in a different environment, away from your parents. You're all pretty much going through the same things. Like, how do you do that to your classmate?
It's a great point. Well, that question is, the answer to that question is what scares the you-know-what out of me, because
Right.
let me tell you, that means that society is unraveling before our freaking eyes tonight. And I want to ask you another situation real quick, and then we're going to move on to something else. What's the worst thing that you saw over the last 2 weeks in your state and city? What would you, in your definition of all these protests, what was the worst of this that you saw out there?
I think that might have been one of them. Just the fact that immediately after the DSA was putting out flyers to have pro-Palestine rallies, when they're saying that, need an immediate ceasefire and praying for peace. Well, it's not about peace when you're putting out pro-Palestine flyers and that's your message, instead of saying we need to pray for peace or let's come together. They drew once again. They drew the line in the sand.
Without a doubt.
By picking a side. And they forced everybody else to do that and then blamed them, like they always do, for having to pick a side.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me ask you this. We've got a developing situation tonight. We've not had, I've been sort of away today from the news to be with my son. But I wanted to ask you about the situation in Maine tonight, and we're going to get into some political stuff. But this Maine situation, this killer that shot up this bowling alley last night, ex-military, seems like just a nut job, had a very disturbed situation. I was listening to some of the stuff tonight, and I mean, this guy, I heard he had a hearing aid, and he believed that voices were coming through that hearing aid, and he was getting ticked off. He had a very bad temper, very short fuse. You put mental instability on that, and you've got a cauldron. You just literally got a recipe for disaster, ex-military. But the part of this I want to ask you about, and it sort of ties into our next subject about the new House Speaker. Why is it that when these things happen, that social media erupts with some of the craziest theories and the craziest lies out there? Because it doesn't help. And I'm laying this on our side as well, not just the left.
Right.
Because the right has been out there today claiming this guy was Arabic, of all things, and he's not. He's an American, unless there's some kind of new Arab out there that looks like, good old Joe from, Maine, and good old South Georgia boy. I mean, he don't look Arabic to me, but that's circulating tonight. And again, we can't on the right very well say to the left, you're putting out misinformation when we do it too. And then when these things happen, our attention should turn to the victims. I'm concerned for those victims tonight. I want them to have justice. Look, this guy, usually these kooks, these nut jobs kill themselves when they do this stuff. They're such cowards. This guy has been held up in his home tonight. I understand they circled the house here within the last hour, and they've had their guns pulled on him. But where do you think these victims are going to, are these victims, are you concerned not going to find justice because our justice system's so messed up? You just don't know how they're going to treat this guy. What's your thoughts on that?
They're going to want to make an example out of him, but why are they only raiding his house now? Okay, they've known who he is for how many hours now? So I think since I woke up this morning, at least, right? And we're just finding out now when I was coming on the show that they surrounded his house. Why weren't they at his house the second that they knew who he was? Unless they might have known for some reason that he was going to come back and didn't want to tip him off or scare him. Then I understand that, and I don't want to get into the heads of the investigators or be a Monday morning quarterback, because maybe they knew what they were doing in this case, and then I applaud them. But I've heard from multiple different sources that that's probably not the case, and that they needed as many investigators as possible, as soon as possible, and they should have been in his house to possibly see where he was going, and was there any maps, So, I don't know, the whole thing is just baffling to me. That's number one. Number two, why was this guy in the streets? He'd been institutionalized for 2 weeks. They knew that he was a complete psychopath. That's
$1 million question right there. Go ahead.
They knew that he had access to all of these different weapons because of his occupation and his training and whatnot. He had made threats to shoot up an army base, which is federal property, so that's a federal crime, with federal employees, another federal crime. And nobody raided his house and confiscated his weapons.
Good question.
So, meanwhile, I forget exactly when it was, a couple of months ago, I think, there was a man that was 75 years old in Utah that made online threats against the president that they deemed were credible. And they went to his house, they raided his house, and they ended up shooting and killing him. Now, I'm not getting into the justification of that case or whatnot, but, why? I just don't understand. Why are these cases being handled differently by the federal government? So, now everybody's up in an uproar about gun legislation and this that needs to be done and this needs to be done. But the same people that want more gun legislation don't really give a shit. Sorry.
No, you can find
if those gun laws are enforced or not. So what good is legislation? The federal government did not do its job here and should have raided his house a long time ago and confiscated his weapons. They had the jurisdiction to do it, and they didn't. So what good is any of this legislation if it's not going to be enforced, number one?
That's a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All good points.
And then they also support policies that don't want to institutionalize people that need to be institutionalized because they are a threat to themselves or the public.
Yeah.
So you can't have things both ways.
Do you, and I found it hilariously funny tonight. Kamala was out there pointing to Australia's tough gun control laws as an example that would have stopped this. That's the biggest lie of these people that want to attack the Second Amendment, that they think that taking all the guns off the street would have kept this nut job, this next military guy, and God knows how many guns he had, it wouldn't have mattered, Jen. And this is where our rights are being eroded. And again, what that does when these politicians get out there and say that, they always and this, because of what you do, I want to ask you this, because this guy, I'm not even directly daily involved with what you do, and I respect you, what you do, more than you'll ever know for these victims. I do, of crime. But even me, when they pimp these people out, and I hate to use that term, but it's almost like they use the victim to push their political agenda. And I think that's the biggest insult. If I was a family member tonight of one of those victims in Maine, and I heard the piece of crap vice president we've got say that crap, I would have words for her that I can't use on this program tonight, because we are a family show sometimes. And but I would say things to her that would light the air blue and light the air red, because you don't use the victims at a time like this to push a political agenda, and politicians always do, and we should be ashamed of ourselves for doing it. They should be ashamed of themselves for doing it, but they're never ashamed. That's all they do when these things happen, correct?
Yeah, and well, that's why I do what I do, Chris, and why I've become so vocal, and why I started Victims' Rights New York, because it's a political action committee where victims can tell their stories and talk about the government and the elected officials, where they, with nonprofits, you're not allowed to, because you can't be political.
That's right.
But each one of us have our own issues where the government failed, or the government could have done better, and it wasn't foreseen what could, unintended consequences or whatnot that need to be addressed. And we can't do that if anybody's politicizing these issues. So I think it's so important that victims get out there and tell their stories and what happened and what they think went wrong. All of the time it's politicians or elected officials or law enforcement, which, I'm huge back the blue, or unions, or people that have a vested interest other than just keeping people safe. They have contracts that they have to worry about, or they have a seat that they want to protect. We don't care about any of that. We just don't want any more victims, and we want to fix what went wrong in honor of our loved ones, so that it didn't happen in vain, and we could feel like, okay, you know what? Yeah, this sucks. My life is going to suck forever, and I'm going to have to deal with this forever, but at least I can do something about it, so it doesn't suck as bad for the next person, or so that there isn't a next person.
Now, don't you find it sort of hypocritical of the left, though, that are being silent tonight about these protests of the barbarism over in Israel, and yet these same leftists, when the gun event takes place, I swear, it's almost like you said a while ago, they had the Palestinian posters almost printed up hours after the Israeli attack. And it's almost like clockwork. It's like within minutes of these events, they're out there pushing gun control. And I mean, it's just like we live in this la la land. And I want to throw the border into this issue because, see, it's sort of off subject, but it's not off subject a lot, because this border concerns me. And I'm just curious how the folks in New York feel, how safe you all are tonight. Because look, that Border Patrol report that came out this week, they're basically, it should scare the hell out of every American, including New Yorkers, including Tennesseans, including people in Montana even, that there is probably terrorist elements similar to what happened, that used similar methods in 9/11 of 2001, that are in this country tonight, that I feel like are waiting for a signal or something to do something very bad. And look, New York is just for whatever reason, look, it's the biggest city in the country. It's the biggest city in America. New York is going to always be ground zero for these things. It's always going to be the target. And y'all have got to feel a little nervous tonight. I would be nervous with the world situation going on, what's about to happen. Is that sort of a correct sentiment of what's going on and how you all feel up there tonight? Or am I, as a Southerner, overreading that?
That's why I'm drinking tonight, Chris. Because, I mean, we feel like the world is going to end.
You ain't the first one that drank before they came on this show. You want me to laugh, so it don't offend me. Don't worry about it.
No, but you don't drive me to drink. The whole just gravity of everything that's happening, and the fact that we are in New York and that all of these people have been imported here. Not only have they been imported, but we know that they're not just from Mexico or Venezuela or a few fleeing. They're true asylum seekers. We know where they're coming from. So, Middle East. How did they have the funds to fly here?
That's a great point.
From Africa, from
great point.
So, and we're paying $500 a night for them to stay here and maybe come into our homes next week and behead our babies and burn us to death.
Pretty much.
I mean, yeah, it's a shit show.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It is scary. Folks, you're watching a very special Live Mac Files Thursday night. I got my dear friend Jennifer Harrison with us of the Victims' Rights PAC.com. Victims' Rights PAC.com is our website, and another one we'll mention at the end of the show. We're going to talk about another 10 minutes with her about some things, and I'm going to open up the chat for a few minutes for questions, but not right now. But we're glad to have you, my friend. Listen, I want to switch gears on you, talk a little bit about the other big news of the week. The Republicans finally got their backsides together and elected a speaker yesterday. And I had never really followed Mike Johnson, Representative Mike Johnson's career. I'd seen him. I didn't really put the name together with the man. I remember some of his beatdowns. Look, some of his comments have been popcorn worthy to me. I've actually liked the guy, and the second I heard about it, I contacted some dear friends of mine in Louisiana because he's from Louisiana, actually their district, and they had nothing but glowing comments. And my friends are not real right-wing MAGA; they're conservative, but they look at the world like I do with a very moderate, common sense approach. This political stuff just makes my head spin. But we just look at the world differently down south than folks do in other parts of the country. And we just look at things with a common sense. And he said, his comment to me was, Mike Johnson is a common sense, constitutional conservative that has got one great skill that others before him have not had, and that is to bring Congress together to get stuff done. That was his comment to me. And in his speech yesterday, and I know that this partisanship, it's hard for us on the right to accept the fact that there's another party in this country. It's hard for the left to accept the fact there's a Republican Party in this country. But he turned to Hakeem Jeffries and he said, I know we're not going to agree on much, but for the sake of the country, he said, we have got to come together as both parties and govern for the people. Now, we talked a little bit before the show tonight. You don't know much about him, but you've heard some weird stuff, and that's where I'm sort of going with this, because the left is demonizing him. And I've always used a litmus test about whether a choice is good or not. If the ladies on The View are trashing him, good call, Republicans. If MSNBC is trashing him, good call, Republicans. If CNN is trashing him, good call, Republicans. I think we got us a winner. I got us a winner, because that's what they're doing tonight and saying all sorts of crazy crap about him, which is a bunch of turd. Go ahead. Tell us what you feel.
Well, I mean, I don't really know too much about him either. I'm pretty sure he was one of the members of the Judiciary Committee that I testified before in Manhattan at the field hearing regarding Alvin Bragg's dereliction of duty and political weaponization of his office.
Yes.
And he was very good to us there, so everything that he said made sense and was extremely supportive. And, I guess, we just have to wait and see. I don't know if he's a leader. I mean, he's already done some great things his first day today, right? So we'll see. But the left definitely is going after him. They're saying some pretty extreme things. I do know that he is extremely conservative. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm not sure how him and the Democrats are going to be able to govern together, on some of his positions. But we'll see how. I'm willing to give him a chance. I was a really big Jim Jordan fan. I felt like he was the leader that we needed. I feel like he was the man of the moment. He knew when to push back. He knew when to compromise. But that's not what happened. I'm pretty pissed off at my the downstate New York delegation for going against him. he brought a field hearing to Manhattan, for Christ's sake,
Yeah.
to bring attention to the crime going on here that only helped them. Nobody else has done that for victims. Nobody else has given the platform that Jim Jordan has given to victims.
I'll agree with that. Well, I'm with you on that. Look, I was for Jim, and I was all in with Jordan, but I've been told that Johnson is actually Jim Jordan with a suit and glasses, because him and Jim are of the same cloth. Now, whether he's going to do the things Jim did, I don't know, but it is encouraging to hear that we got basically Jim Jordan 1A, not Jim Jordan 1, but we got 1A. And all things considered, with that bunch up there in D.C., we breaking even. That's all I got to say. We broke even. At the worst, we just broke even with Mike Johnson, and I'm proud of the fact that he's going to be our speaker, at least till January. And then we'll see what happens at the first or next year when they have these elections. I hope that, and look, I wish him the best, and I'm with you. Look, it remains to be seen. But Jen, this is not a political. I'm not a politician. Chris wouldn't survive 3 minutes. You would disown me. If I ever got in political office, my first press conference, I would lose every friend I got because I clean freaking house. We would give it the Southern charm on steroids, but it wouldn't be charm because we tell these liberals where to take their crap and shove it. And I wouldn't think twice about it. And I know in politics you can't do that. You got to be a diplomat. You got to smooth and all.
I think
Mike's going to have to,
I think that's what we're missing in politics. The left has no problem walking all over everybody else and
absolutely
to call them a racist or to plant stories about sexual abuse or assault they're terrorists.
That's right.
To be honest with you, and they don't want to compromise. They work based on fear and threats. And I think that we really need strong leadership and strong people in office that are going to say, I'm not scared of your threats anymore. You're not willing to compromise, and meet them where they are and call them out on their garbage.
One other quick thing, and then we're going to open up to questions for another 10 minutes or so. It's so good to have you tonight. It's been good always to see you, and we always appreciate your insight. The other story that broke late this evening, the Gateway Pundit story, Mark Meadows, and I do want you to comment about President Trump's trial because it's going on in your backyard right now. I tell you, this DA, this lady that's handling this, Letitia James, I think she is the absolute. I've never seen a worse individual in my life. What they've done to President Trump. I want to just go on record again tonight and tell my audience. I may not agree with every jot and tittle that Donald Trump says or does. I may not agree with his methods sometimes. It don't bother me because I'm used. I've talked to New Yorkers, and that's what the New Yorkers love about him because he's a New Yorker. And I got a dear friend, John Matola, up there, and he told me, he said, we New Yorkers love that kind of stuff. We don't care. He don't offend us up here. I know he don't play well in other parts of the country. That's never bothered me. My issue tonight is this justice system that has been weaponized by the Biden administration to go after a political opponent. And I have never seen a more travesty of justice and the things they're doing to him, Jen. I'm going to tell you something. If they get away with this, we all had better, I tell you something, we're screwed as a country. We're already screwed anyway, I think. But if this justice is allowed to go on without check and balance, and that's why Jim Jordan, as you rightfully said, Jim was the only one calling attention to it in the House as he should have. Somebody needs to step in and slap this lady down bad because what she's doing is a travesty, and the judge in the case is even worse than her. And it just makes you shake your head. And then there were rumblings in another case, not the New York case, but the J6 case that Smith is doing, that Mark Meadows evidently, supposedly, according to the left-wing websites, was wearing a wire, and he supposedly was, baiting Trump up to say a bunch of junk. And that story tonight has fallen apart because Mark Meadows himself has come out through his spokesman and said it's a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of BS. Tell us a little bit what your thoughts are on this trial going on in New York, and we're going to open it to questions. It's got to bother you. Look, you and I are justice people. We're faith people. We just see things as being fair. this ain't fair what's going on with President Trump. That's just my opinion. From the South, from the cheap seats down here in the South, looking in from up here, down here, up there. It's travesty of justice. What say you?
You know, you're so right. You're so spot on with everything. And we actually gave Tish James a run for her money last cycle. You know, she actually had to call her opponent, Michael Henry, who I became very friendly with and campaigned with and got involved with very early on in his campaign. She had to call him and say, like, you know, you should be really proud of yourself, because she didn't think that she was going to have to work. But, you know, she came out, like, after George Floyd and whatnot, she came out and decided that she was going to prosecute police officers and take over all of the investigations involving police shootings or police-involved deaths, and prosecute police officers while protecting criminals. So we knew how awful she was right at the bat. And, you know, then she went after Governor Cuomo because she wanted his seat. We needed so much more from her. She's a sloppy political hack. She doesn't know how to prosecute. She doesn't know how to put together a good case. And that's why she had to use this executive law and not put this case before a jury, because she knows that she's not competent and good at what she does. So she did it this way instead and circumvented the system. It's completely ridiculous. I hope that if Donald Trump, you know, he's already basically been found guilty of certain things. I think there's some decisions that have to still be made, but I hope that he appeals it, and I hope that this law is ruled unconstitutional, because nobody should have to go through this.
Let me interrupt you real quick. This is I posted this tonight, and I thought these wasn't working when I read it. But the ACLU of all organizations come out and said Trump's right. The gag order is unconstitutional. When the left loses the ACLU, baby,
I know.
Bye left. Can you believe that?
Put coats on, light your fires, put blankets over your coats, because hell has frozen over.
Hell is frozen over when the ACLU backs Trump. It's over, left. I'm sorry, Letitia. Right. Goodbye.
But it's about time they stood up and did what they're supposed to be doing, right? Instead of just only backing one side. It's just so ridiculous. And if this wasn't political for her, and it was really about protecting the little guy, then why isn't she also using this law to go after the banks?
Bingo.
For illegal and irresponsible lending practices? Because it is front and center. That's that right. They are supposed to do their own due diligence. And if he submitted fraudulent documents to get loans, how did they not catch that? We already had to bail these big banks out in 2008 with TARP money and whatnot for the same illegal practices. So if she really cared about protecting the little guy and not just going after Donald Trump for her political career, then she would be going after everybody, and she's not doing that.
Well, if I used to be in banking, and I maybe I'm missing something here, because the only time that we ever, as a banking system, would have looked at somebody's records was if they defaulted on a loan. Like, as long as they was paying the loan, we didn't care. I mean,
well, when was that?
Oh, back in the 90s, late 90s.
Right.
Long time ago, when the hair wasn't as white. Actually, it was the 80s, come to think of it. Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago, but has it changed to where now the banks can just arbitrarily pull your bank and fall? Because, again, that's a breach. Isn't that a breach of privacy? Because unless he's defaulting on his loan, that's none of their business.
Number one, I think things got a lot stricter after 9/11 when you had to, because they wanted to make sure that you weren't tied to any terrorist organizations and whatnot. So I don't know if you remember, but loans got a lot harder to get and whatnot, and they becoming stricter with that. And then after 2008, things started getting stricter again because of all the subprime mortgages and the banks going under. But, I mean, really, that's what should have been happening to begin with, because as a bank, especially if you have shareholders, and you have, people that have money in their personal money in your accounts, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders, to your investors, and to the people that bank with you to protect their money and their investments.
Yeah.
So you can't just go lending, $8 million or whatever amount it is to somebody that's never going to be able to pay back that money, and then it has to come out either in fees or anything else from your customers, or you go under because you don't have that money to recover, and the Treasury has to cover it.
If his last name wasn't Trump, do you think that he'd be sued, be in that courtroom tonight? I don't.
No.
I don't. Folks, you're watching a very live special Mac Files. If you got a question for my dear friend Jen, we're going to keep her about 10 more minutes. It's past her bedtime anyway. I'm going to get her off of here before she drinks herself.
I'll pour myself another
pour yourself another drink. Oh, you probably do your best interviews when you're a little lit, Harrison, is what I hear. But no, we're proud of you. I want to say this to you, public. If you got a question for Jen, please put it in the house, folks, both Facebook and YouTube tonight. Look, I've watched you on these other networks. You really carry yourself well. You're a great spokesman for these victims, and I think that you do a wonderful job. I know you got a uphill battle with everything with the PAC. Look, it's all about you funding. You got to get people to help you and get behind you when you do these things. But I do believe that people like you are so vitally important right now because the left and this woke justice system is so messed up right now, and there's got to be a voice out there of sanity in it. And I look at you as one of these voices. But anyway, do you think where did you see this thing going with Trump? I know you mentioned the one thing they found him guilty of. Do you think that he beats this on appeal? And what do you do with this judge? Where do you get a recourse for this clown that's on the bench? He's worse than her.
We have no recourse in New York because our very competent governor, Kathy Hochul, gave everybody in the legislature a really nice pay increase before she secured her nomination for a moderate judge, LaSalle. And then the left took over after they got their pay increases, and now there's a very, very progressive and woke judge as the chief administrative judge controlling all of the other judges and their positions in the state. So we have no system of checks and balances in the state. We're governed in New York by a completely corrupt criminal enterprise, and that's not going to change until we take away one-party rule. And to be honest with you, I don't believe in one-party rule with Republicans either, because they get power hungry and we lose our sense of checks and balances. So, I would like to see Republicans in control more because they're more in line with common sense. But I don't believe in one-party rule with anything because I don't think that anybody should have that kind of power. But we have no chance right now in New York, and I'm hoping that will change. I don't know if there's any New Yorkers that are watching right now, but we have local elections coming up starting this weekend. You can vote early starting Saturday. And really, local elections are actually, wherever anybody's listening, local elections are so vitally important because that's like your first step to your closest representative that's going to be your voice. That person in that local office is most accountable to you because they're home in your town, seeing you at restaurants. They're not going to D.C., they're not going to wherever the state capital is. They're home all the time. Their kids go to school. They're going to games. They're going to Board of Ed meetings. So they're the most lowest turnout elections as well too. So you really have to get out and vote in your local elections. It's so important, and I'm hoping we have a real chance at flipping a couple of districts in New York City of some of the most progressive people out there. And maybe that will start sending a message. Yeah.
And I think you may have just answered Pat Isaac's question from Facebook tonight. She says, can the new speaker do anything to help Trump with these judges? I don't think he's got any recourse right now.
No.
I mean, he's stuck. I mean, in this case at least, and I want to remind people, this is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. But, I mean, they're kicking him pretty good up there, and I don't know what they're going to try to fine him. But I do want to go back to the gag order. It's a joke. The gag order's a joke. I mean, I don't mean this with any offense to you New Yorkers, because you New Yorkers are tough. Y'all are tough cookies. Yankees are tough. And it just makes me want to get in that judge's face and says, what is it about Trump that you're so worried about him going out there and saying, because he may hurt your feelings because you suck as a judge, the DA sucks. It ain't the first client that's ever went out there and said stuff that we're not getting a fair trial. People do it every day, every time somebody has a trial. This is America, Jen. This ain't the freaking communist gulag of China.
Well, not when you're governed by what I said is a criminally corrupt, a corrupt criminal enterprise. And all these people are in cahoots with each other, and they all hate him. And you know what? Like, I've known about Donald Trump for a very long time. A lot of people in New York, and like you said before, like, you might not agree with everything that he does. I don't necessarily agree with his personality, but I vote for him based on his policy. That's all that matters to me. But there are a lot of people that are out to get him for certain reasons, maybe politically, maybe personally. They have vendettas, whatever it is. And they don't want him talking about it. They don't want him being in office. They know that their policies are failing. They know they can't answer for it. They know people are dying. They know people are suffering. And they have no answers. And so for him to get out there and be able to speak his mind and campaign based on what they've done, because they backed themselves into a corner by crucifying him like this, they don't want him to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But I do want to answer, I'm sorry, I forget her name. I do want to answer that question, because really there's nothing that we can do, but people like Jim Jordan on the Judiciary Committee, people on the Oversight Committee,
can look into it.
They might uncover things about these federal judges. So if there's anything nefarious at play, Congress, and thank God we have a Republican House, they can uncover, and then there could be recourse if there's any nefarious activity or wrongdoing there. Right.
Good question. Corey Aguilar's question is another good one. This is about the protesters. It's an excellent question, actually. She says, pro-Palestine protesters are sponsored by the Democratic Socialist of America. Can victims of these protesters sue them? And if they get violent and they do stupid stuff, can there be any lawsuits through this, do you think, sue the Democrats?
There was actually somebody, I think there was a vigil in Times Square right before I came on, that a pro-Palestine protester went up to a person that was there for a vigil for the lost souls. It wasn't pro-Israel. It wasn't, divisive. It wasn't hateful. It was just a vigil for the lost souls of Israel. And a pro-Palestine protester went up and attacked them and grabbed the Israeli flag. And so NYPD got involved right away. But yeah, they could sue that person civilly for damaging their property if there's any harm done. I mean, there's tort laws that have to be followed. But yeah, absolutely. And we're actually, as victims, we're looking for, if anybody's out there, we're looking for attorneys that are looking forward to get work.
I bet.
Or get a little bit creative.
Yeah.
And get involved in civil rights lawsuits, for victims that have been have lost a family member or have been harmed or attacked by recidivists that were released by the government that's supposed to protect us.
Let me ask you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. And you know what? That could go for any citizen too. Like when you're riding a New York City subway, we have the basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that right includes being able to walk down your street free from fear and having to look over your shoulder that you're going to be attacked by some maniac. Or me living in, I have quiet enjoyment, a peaceful enjoyment, right, to living in my house, right, even if you're in a rental, where I shouldn't have to be fearful of somebody just walking in my house in broad daylight and robbing and raping me. So our civil rights are being violated by the people that are releasing all of these monsters. So we're looking for lawyers to do that. That's really on my top of the priorities.
You got about 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you a question myself. Going back to these Jewish kids that were locking themselves in the bathroom, was that at a high school in Brooklyn or a college?
College. It was a private university.
Private university. Does the college bear responsibility for that? I think they do, because you do not, and I heard Harris Faulkner say this today, and she was spot on. And she said the colleges, the excuse was, well, we are haven to educate all students, Palestinian and Jewish. And I love what Harris Faulkner said. She said, that's bullcrap. No, your number one job is to protect students and their lives, because a lot of these kids don't live in New York. They're from all over the world, all over the country. And if you can't provide a safe environment, it don't make a what you teach them if they can't even sit down with their notebooks in hand and computers without worrying about somebody cutting their head off. And these kids had a legitimate fear because, look, no offense, one thing, I don't know if it was a meme, I don't know if it was what Donald Trump actually said, but I'm going to say it myself tonight. I'm not Islamophobia, but what I do have a phobia of is I would like to go through this life without having my head cut off by Islamic jihadist terrorists. And if these kids felt fear, that's on the college, Jen. Am I too extreme with that?
No, and actually I'm going to try to get through this without cursing. But, we had universities shut down during COVID, right, for like this virus.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? So in the name of public safety and keeping students and teachers safe, everybody had to wear a mask that we knew didn't work. Everybody had to get a shot that we knew didn't work and might have made us sick. We weren't allowed to go to work. But now these kids who are legitimately in fear of their lives, there's no recourse for them. Shut the schools down, send all of these kids home, let their parents deal with them, and have remote learning until we know that everybody's safe, because this is uncontrollable. It's an unsustainable situation, and we should not wait until blood spills. It's beyond anything that I've ever seen before, and I cannot imagine my child being in an environment like that and being scared for his safety on a daily basis, not being able to get there. That being said, I also think, when we had the mask mandates and whatnot, I have an 11-year-old son. I homeschooled him for 2 years. It is the responsibility of every parent that has a child in any one of these universities to take them out, bring them home, and demand a refund.
I'll agree with that. That's best.
Get attorneys involved, sue their asses, and hold them accountable in whatever way possible. We're in America, no taxation without representation. That goes for universities too. No tuition unless there's safety for your child. No tuition without the proper education. Take them out, get a refund. This should not be going on, and we need to fight back and hit them where it hurts in their wallets. And
that's what's happening with these protests, these billionaires. There was another one in Columbia today that pulled their money out of these colleges. That will get the college's attention. Yep. It's not getting Harvard's attention yet, but when Harvard goes bankrupt because all of their trustees, or whatever you call them, pull their money out, they'll get it. They'll get the message, and they'll tell these punk kids, sit your blanks down. This is unacceptable behavior. We don't agree with baby killing. We don't agree with baby beheadings. We don't agree with being burned at the stake, women being raped. These guys were, these barbaric monsters were literally raping dead women in the street. I mean, Harvard, we're an institution of learning. We're not an institution of barbarism. And they will not understand that until, like you just said, you hit them in the wallet. You hit them in the wallet. Buddy, our time is up. Listen, thank you. I'm going to give you 1 minute. Wrap us up. Final thoughts. Tell everybody where they can find you on the internet. And it's good to have you tonight. Good stuff on this Thursday night. Wrap us up.
Thank you so much. So everywhere on social media, it's Victims' Rights New York or Victims' Rights NY. I have the PAC. It's a political action committee where we get involved in campaigns on the state level. We're not a super PAC yet, so we don't get involved in federal stuff. But in New York State, where we're in the belly of the beast and, fighting against George Soros on a daily basis, that's victimsrightsnypac.com. And then I also am the executive director of the Victims' Rights Reform Council, which is our nonprofit that provides support and advocacy for victims of violent crime. We have a legislative and policy agenda. We do a lot of stuff, media placements to get stories out there, and that is victimsrightsreformcouncil.org.
Sounds good. Jennifer Harrison, everybody, I want you to put some fire in that house for Jen. We'll have you back on soon. And if something breaks and you feel like you need to come on, I'm a phone call away. We'll get you on very quickly. And listen, be safe up there. And I mean this very sincerely. Look, it is a dangerous time in this. I told my son this today. I told him, I said, son, we're living in probably one of the most dangerous times that your father has ever seen in his lifetime. And I'm not an old guy, I'm not a young guy. I'm sort of one of those middle-agers. But I'm serious. I'm concerned for the safety of our nation tonight. And nowhere safe. But especially up in that northeast area where you're at, our prayers are for the safety of you New Yorkers, and that God will protect you, and He'll protect this great nation, because there's some forces in it that are not good tonight. And our best to you. And listen, we'll have you back on soon, okay?
Chris, that brings up one more thing. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But
go ahead.
Just one more second. But, I've been thinking about that. I lay awake at night a lot. I haven't really slept in a while thinking about that. But at the same time, I'm also extremely concerned about the rest of our country, because look at what these animals just did. They did nothing that anybody would ever expect. And what we would expect would be for them to attack us in New York, or for them to attack the Pentagon or DC, or, So I'm praying for everybody right now, because we don't know what's next, or what are they going to go into your houses in Tennessee or the Midwest, because we wouldn't expect that. I mean, I don't want anybody to live in fear, but I hope everybody just stays vigilant, because this really is a scary time, and we don't know what's next anywhere.
I'm going to tell you something. You took the words out of my mouth a few days ago, because I told somebody the very same thing, that this is not a conventional enemy. And
right.
While our attention may be on New York City, and our attention may be on Miami and Chicago and LA, they're not concerned about those cities as much, because, see, these softer cities, these softer targets, Jen, are far more vulnerable, because most people, look, even in this little community I'm in, I guarantee you, I don't even think about it, because I'm in Tennessee, I'm in the mountains.
Right.
This stuff is just like, we would never dream something like this would happen here. And that's most Americans tonight in rural America. But I would caution you out there, what happened last night in Maine didn't happen in a big metropolis. Lewiston, Maine, I've been through there. It's just a small podunk holler town in Maine. Nothing against you Lewiston people. And we got a listener that is a faithful listener. She's out, her and her mom were in the vicinity of that area last night. But Maine's Maine. It's not like it's metropolis.
Right.
Those kind of things are coming to rural America. And I think your point is excellent and on point and on spot. And people need to be vigilant. I don't care where you're at tonight. You better be alert, because things are percolating in a bad way. Listen, we got to run.
And stay armed.
Stay armed. Absolutely. Jennifer Harrison, everybody. Put some fire, Jen. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Jennifer Harrison, everybody. Put some fire in that house fire. And we're grateful that she has decided to make her Thursday night a Thursday night with us. And let me get this off of here. And I should pop up on that. There we go, right there. Whoops. I accidentally deleted my background. Hang on just a second. Let me get my background back. Let me see here. This is why when you're on live TV and live podcasting, you just never know what's going to happen. Whoa, and that just took me off, so we're going to move this down so you can see me. There we go. Voila. We're back. And did you enjoy Jen Harrison tonight? I tell you what, she was excellent, wasn't she? And it is good to see everybody in the house. Good to see Carrie out there, Julia, MOM, Amber, Emily, Melissa, Roberta, Kimber, 54. Good to see you. Cleo's in the house tonight. Lisa Esco, Crystal Neff, Joe Rowan, Emily Courtney, Amber James, good to see you. And Ken Henderson up there. And then all of our Facebook audience tonight. That would include Sonia, Susan, Jimmy, Tim Neal, Amy Miller, good to see you, dear. Roger Hooker, Mary Cleveland, Corey Aguilar, Pat Isaacs, good question. Anna, Sarah Padilla, I hope I didn't murder your name, Anna. And then we had Kathy Tardif. Kathy's comment was earlier. She says, hello from Maine, just letting all know that Mom and I and family are safe. What a horrible tragedy. We all live in the vicinity area. And Kathy, we're grateful that y'all are safe tonight. I think it is a terrible tragedy. I'm going to say this about what happened in Maine, folks. Look, the information that gets out there on that internet, folks, is so crazy. And look, I know that people want to, get facts out there and make sure that we know everything. And, one of the comments that was made I saw on X was that if he was Arabic, that was a way to get the story off the mainstream media. Well, he's not. He's an American. He's ex-military, unless there's some kind of weird discovery that they're going to come up with. But my point to Jen is my point to you tonight, folks. You got to be careful of this stuff, even on the right. Look, I appreciate the zeal to get truth and to get truth out there, but it's got to be the truth. And we on the right are just as bad as the left. We just are. I mean, in some ways, we toss our stones at the left, and they're just about misinformation and this and that. Folks, we put out just as much misinformation on the right as they do. And when these things happen, our attention should focus 1,000% on the victims and stop trying to figure out why a nut job ex-military guy with some mental problems that, as Jen said, should not have been on the streets to begin with, went amok. There are 16 people grieving tonight, 16 families that are grieving tonight, 80 people that are injured. I'm sure that death toll is probably going to go up. We don't want it to, but it's just the reality of it. These injuries are very serious from what I understand. They do have his house surrounded tonight. I don't have an update. I need to put a TV in here sort of on these nights when we do our newscast. Listen, I was going to come on later tonight. It's already 9:40 to do a late show. I'm going to bypass that because we've got tomorrow coming up. We got a Bible study in the morning early, and then we'll have a show tomorrow night late. Cleo's going to be with me by phone. We're going to be talking about this anti-Semitism that's going on in the country, and we'll deal with some news articles and items, and we'll give you an update. Now, if something we find out is explosive that happens during the night, I'm going to say this, folks. It's 24/7 right now. We're all hands on deck. I don't care what hour of the night it is. If I feel the need to get on this network, we will come back on this news network. We're going to be changing the name of it very soon, and it will be a daily newscast for about an hour. We're not sure what time of the day it'll be. We'll have weather, sports, just like you have a regular newscast. And it will precede the regular MacFile programming that night that will air on the network as well. And we're going to try to build another network up. We're not shredding listeners, but it's a slow decline right now on this network. We're going to try to build another one up. The Faith Network is going up. This news network is going down because a lot of people don't like that emblem right there. And we're going to deal with a lot of this junk that's out there tomorrow night. So I encourage you to be with me tomorrow night. Be with me in the morning on the Faith Network for the Bible study. I don't really feel like there's a lot I can cover tonight that we didn't cover yesterday in our update, other than just give you all a chance to rant. Now, I may just change my mind. I've been known to do that. And if the wild hair hits me for you West Coast folks, then we may be back later tonight. But as of now, no late show like we had planned. But tomorrow, all hands on deck, and we will, after we let Cleo off the phone, we'll probably take some questions tomorrow night, do a Q&A, and let you have an open mic Friday and say what you got to say, and because that's usually what we do on Friday night. We just let it all hang out. But not tonight. And we're grateful that you've been with me on this Mac Files Thursday night. I got to give you something interesting. Only Jason Miller can come up with this stuff. I don't know how he does it. Jason's coming on soon. I got to figure a time to get him on. I'm a baseball fan, and I want to just say that I want to congratulate the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks for being in the World Series. The World Series, I think, how did Jason? It's 119 years old. And he pointed out to me today that 119 spelled backwards is 9/11. Well, what's an eerie irony to that is that the last time the Arizona Diamondbacks played in the World Series, and I remember this because they knocked my Braves out to get there, was October of 2001, which was a month after 9/11. And George Bush Jr. at that time was the owner of the Texas Rangers at one time before he became president. He was president at the time, but before then, he was part owner of the Texas Rangers baseball club. So a lot of eerie things circulating over that, and see, only Miller can come up with that stuff. I wouldn't think of that in a million years. Boy's got to give. That's all I got to say. That's why we're friends. And he's a good guy. And we're going to have Jason on talk about stuff like that. But that's an eerie, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but I'm going to say this about the Texas Rangers. And this is why I salute them tonight. And I'm going to salute the Arizona Diamondbacks for something else too. Both teams are class organizations. But Texas was the only baseball team this summer, the only one out of the 26, that did not host an LGBTQ Pride Night. Their organization refused to do it. When all of baseball was clamoring and screaming for them to do it and saying, y'all, you need to do this, they said, nope, we sure ain't. We're not going to expose our families to that situation. Now, this is not a commentary on the LGBTQ community or being homophobic or whatever. But I'm looking at it from a standpoint of a family with a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid and having transgenders parade on the pitcher's mound telling you this is normal behavior. I saluted Texas this summer. I salute them tonight. I'm glad they're in the World Series. Other than the fact they beat my dear friend Leslie Millie's Houston Astros. That was only, and she was not heartbroken because she says Texas has 2 great baseball teams, and they did, but she was pulling for the Astros. But I love Bruce Bochy, the manager. He's a class act. The Texas Rangers organization is a class act organization for doing what they did. The Arizona Diamondbacks, and I do not have the gentleman's name, the pitcher that pitched the Game 7 clincher 2 nights ago in Philadelphia in a very hostile environment. The media is throwing shade at Arizona tonight because the pitcher was reading the Bible before he went out and pitched that gem against Philadelphia. And I thought to myself, instead of rejoicing in the fact you got a man that's sitting there reading God's Word before a baseball game, probably praying before he went on that mound, again, to the Arizona Diamondbacks for having such a man in your organization, I salute you. I salute you. So we got a good World Series this year, other than the fact it's not the Braves. Braves were not in there this year. They choked a little bit in the playoffs like we always do. We Braves fans, we do what Jennifer Harrison was doing tonight on my show. We drink a lot. Come playoff time. We always play good in the regular season, and then we choke. We choke when the playoffs come around. We choked again this year. But I want to say it again before I say goodnight. To the Texas Rangers tonight, congratulations for being in the World Series. I think it's prophetic myself. And I think it's a sign of God's blessings on them for standing up for what was right this summer. And I hope you go all the way. I'm pulling for you. Nothing against you Arizona fans, but I'm pulling for the Rangers. And I hope they bring a championship to Texas. I really do. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk about that more tomorrow night. God bless this great nation of America. Did you enjoy Jennifer Harrison? I hope you did. I sure did. And we love you all tonight. We thank you for being with us tonight on this Thursday night. Have a good night, everybody. And just in case I don't see you till tomorrow, get some rest out there. Protect each other. Have each other's back. If we get a breaking update, check our Telegram room, themacfiles.org. We're posting stories there throughout the night if something breaks. And we'll see you back here tomorrow night. And we got a doubleheader probably coming tomorrow, or at least an extended show tomorrow night, because we'll take your questions and give you a chance to chime in and chime off. However that works. All right? Listen, have a good one, and we shall see you when we see you. God bless, friend. Have a good night, everybody. Be blessed out there.